welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, one, welcome to the off season, and two, this is an AFC West podcast with a representative from each of the four teams in the AFC West. We break down all sorts of different things, including plays, players, games, you name it. We basically cover it here as it pertains to our division. And with the addition now of Pete Carroll, this is going to be one gauntlet of a division to go through with the coaching expertise that is here in the AFC West. And I do expect to see some pretty tough games and schedules, not only just between us, but I also think that this is going to be that kind of gauntlet division that other teams and other divisions are going to be kind of circling on their calendars going forward.
Double AARP has their hands full with these coaches.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Directly over here to my left or right, depending on which way you are facing the screen here, is the real Alex Gibbons. Catch his content over on Arrowhead Addict. That is the written word. And as the season kicks off again in a fairly long time from now, but it is what it is.
Be here before you know it.
Before you know it, it catches up to you. Let me tell you. He's got the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast with Alex and Coach Defense over there on the Locked Down Defense YouTube channel. You can go ahead and check them out and give them a subscribe. Down below here, we have DZ. Thank you for joining us again, repping his Chargers. And diagonally over here is Monsieur Jack Hanna giving us his insight on his Las Vegas Raiders.
Salute, Nation.
So just to kind of quickly cover off the one kind of bigger piece of news within the division from a coaching / player kind of perspective, really, is the Denver Broncos. My team hired Saints special team or former special team coordinator he basically has a Sean Payton connection, so that's really no surprise to anyone.
Yeah.
Woo! I can't believe it.
Taysom Hill to make his way there.
That's obviously the big kind of thing that's been happening right now, right? Which is, all right, it looks like it's a Saints reunion, and who's gonna come over from the Saints next?
Richie, would you say the Saints are like your guys' sister team right now?
I'd say yes and no. I think that there is
the AAA farm team.
Yeah, I think that Sean Payton is being very selective about who he's drawing from the Saints. I think he's pulling guys from there that he believes can be culture setters. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be honest, I'm all for it. The Saints have been a pretty solid team, generally speaking, since Sean Payton got there. They have been, they've never kind of been completely blown out of a season, really. They've had really solid records, generally speaking, and they've drafted fairly well. And now they've also had that, roster blow up that they had to go through as a result of some poor GMing there. But Sean Payton has been gone for a while, and really that's on the Saints in order to make proper and tough decisions. And if they're not doing it, then frankly, that's on them. But Sean Payton is selecting certain guys that he believes can be tone setters and culture changers. Denver Broncos needed that in a real, in the worst way. You also saw guys who were, known as being somewhat diva-style players on the roster get cut and kicked to the curb from the roster when Sean Payton came in. And I think that just kind of goes to show Sean Payton recognizes that you need a certain culture on a team like his in order to be successful. And since he's been here, we have had certain success, including our first playoff appearance in 9 years as a result of Sean Payton and the way he's coached the team. So I would say the results are somewhat undeniable at this point. Selected a quarterback that fit him properly and well, and has certainly succeeded with Bo Nix as a rookie as well, which I think is a big deal. Just for those of you who don't know the coach's name, it's Darren Rizzi. They call him Coach Riz as a kind of nickname. Darren Rizzi. Yeah, so he was he was a Saints special teams coordinator when Sean Payton was there. Obviously, very much likes him in the way he operates and does things. A lot of people might be asking why the Broncos made that move. Well, I think you need to look no further than kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, and that was the KC block punt, where we were able to fake it till you make it until that point in the season. We had a pretty good punt returner. We did well with that and all that sort of thing. But when it comes to some of the other elements like preparation, etc., we were underprepared, and the right players were not put in the right spot. And I think that kind of goes to show coaching. The other thing that special teams, and I've always maintained this, and Alex can attest to my comment here, special teams and special teams quality often speaks a lot to the depth on your roster. So if you have roster depth, then you typically also have good special teams. Again, look at this dude's team over here. Made it to the Super Bowl and has done for like 3 of the last 5 years or something crazy. So it speaks volumes as to when you have good quality depth on your roster and a good special teams coach, that you can actually really do some pretty dangerous things in that third phase of the game, which is often overlooked by many fans, but is mission critical for your team's success.
I concur. The Chargers have been lucky with the hiring of their special teams coach. I think we've gone from like one of the worst to, pretty top upper echelon these last few years. So glad the Harbaugh regime kept him on board, because it's been a breath of fresh air, not having to, hold your breath every time a guy goes for, a field goal or something.
I've been blessed with the players that I got at, the kicking game, kicking, punting. I've been blessed, though. The coaches haven't been playing as big as a part because there's been so much turnover within Raider Nation on our coaches that way. But that squad's always stayed pretty consistent. So it never hurts getting better guys on, punt returns, kick returns, making tackles. So it never hurts. So good job, Alex.
Yeah, there's a reason why his team has done so well, right? Is you operate well in all three phases, and having the kicker and the punter are one element of special teams, but there's the other elements of the special teams that also matter as well, like blocking. Is there a weak man that's blocking that's getting bulldozed like we have with the Broncos, getting shoved backwards? Well, yes, and guess what happened? A opportunistic, intelligent special teams coach, coaching his guys correctly, has basically coached them to look for those weaknesses and those weak spots, and teach them that this is a game of chess, not checkers.
Yep.
Let's hold off until we absolutely need it, where it makes a difference in the game, and then it's like, it's now or never, boys. Let's go. And that's what a good coach does, right? That is exactly what a good coach does. When you have good depth on your roster, you can actually attack other teams on the special team side of the ball as well. And you can also do what I say the Chiefs have done, and I think my Broncos have started to do a little bit more as we've gotten a little bit more competent players on the roster in the depth positions. And that is, you can start running trick plays to extend drives when you really, really need them. And that's what you get with roster depth. And that's what you get with quality players on your team. Otherwise, there's reasons why some of these teams that are the lower echelons or like with perpetual losing records, there's a reason why pretty much as soon as they get 3 and out, it's not even a question of what they're going to do. It's, are they going to be able to have it run back on them? Right? Like, that's the question. It's like, are they going to be able to stop the return? Whereas the really good teams, you're sitting there saying, are they going to pin them on the 1 or the 5? Right? Like, it's stuff like that, right? And that's literally makes a huge difference. Imagine as a poor team saying the team's automatically starting at minimum the 30, and then a good team saying we got them within the 5 again.
Yeah,
that's 25 yards, like just off the top. Like that is a big deal. That is 2.5 first downs just as a differential between
that's
A
the
and B.
chess. That's the chess coming in.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, I mean, that's that. I don't care who you are. That's a big deal, and that makes a big difference in terms of how you do things and how you can play the game. And then, of course, your playbook as a defensive coordinator then becomes totally different when you got them backed up to the 1 to the 5. As an offensive coordinator, your playbook is severely limited when you're basically throwing out of the end zone. Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is not the same. This is not the same options. You do not have the same ability in the playbook in order to do things. You have to make quick throws. You have to get the heck out. And you have to hope that your players are crisp and sharp enough to make those plays. So, moving on from.
I have one for us. I have a big one. I could spend the whole show talking about all the coaching changes, but I'm just going to talk about one of the most recent ones in losing our assistant GM in Champ Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was actually a big loss, which is kind of weird because, since he was on the roster, he's the one who made all the choices, as when he took over as interim GM and all the reserve players and the future players that were coming, they're going to be on, the practice squad. And then, he goes off and, to Jacksonville, doesn't get the job there. And then, they mutually part ways. So I haven't really heard any information, which I was really kind of surprised with Spytech. I was thinking that would have been a good pairing between the two. And I know the Raiders maybe were trying to hold on to him because if he did get that job, then Raiders would have got 2 third-round draft picks.
Yeah.
So, but as soon as he was out of the running, then he got let go. But he's a quality assistant GM, and so I'm kind of curious. I'm waiting for stuff to come out and get the feel like what really kind of happened behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with when we talked about it, kind of like you said behind the scenes. I agree with Richie's take in that it was probably he felt slighted or disrespected in the fact of like, hey, I've been an integral part of this front office for what, 3? How long has he been there? 3+ years.
Yeah.
I mean, and worked his way up. You guys gave me this, assistant GM title, and I'm sure there was some conversation along the way of like, you play your cards right, you're going to be GMs one of these days, and then, Brady regime comes in and he gets his buddy from college, and then it's like, we're going to do it this way. I hear what you're saying, but we got our vision, and he's like, well, I want out. I mean, not that any of us would know, but I think that makes the most logical sense, just kind of reading the tea leaves, if you will. And
that's almost the same thing that's going on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
I was going to say, it is very possible. They could have been kind of almost using each other, him being employed for more leverage, with Jacksonville, because as soon as that deal was done, that's when they parted ways. And from what I understand, it's a mutual thing. So, Alex, you could be completely right. He's been here. He's a quality, general manager, assistant general manager, and maybe he just feels like he's not getting a fair shake.
That's what I was going to say. We have a similar situation with Chad Alexander. He was Tom's right-hand guy, assistant GM for a long time. And now Joe Ortiz came in last year with the Harbaugh regime. And so Alexander, I think last year interviewed, and then this year also interviewed with Jacksonville as well and didn't get it. So I'm sure he feels slighted and, thought he would have been the guy to take over. So it's got to be a tough spot being that assistant GM. But do we know if Jacksonville hired somebody?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, they've narrowed it down to 5 apparently, and he didn't. He was in the top 10, didn't make the top 5.
Gotcha.
And so I actually think that probably so this is the thing, right? Is you've got your guy there in Kelly, who was absolutely a major part in what was a successful draft, in my opinion, for the Las Vegas Raiders. I think you guys got some absolute quality players.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, publicly, there was nothing but praise for Champ Kelly's job and his attention to detail, including the depth players that you guys were able to acquire as part of the draft. Yeah. So that's that part over here. The other part from Kelly's perspective, and I don't doubt that this played a huge role, is the fact that he's already shown that he can do the thing. No, he's already shown that he can do the thing. He's already proven to the organization and ownership that he can draft well, that he can actually be a part and put together like quality players that fit what the team wants or needs to do. But then gets basically overlooked for a first-time GM that's worked in a couple front offices. Basically, his exact resume or variation thereof, but without the history with the organization.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't care who you are, but that's effectively the equivalent of you getting leapfrogged when you're sitting there as like the second in command, effectively.
It's a dirty game, man.
And then your boss goes out and hires external to come in and take over the managerial position that you thought really belonged to you or ought to have been yours to at least prove yourself in, right? And Champ Kelly wasn't even given that as an opportunity, and I think that has played. There's no way that could not have played a role. Is basically what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, and you know what? In the chat too, they talked about that Spycheck got a 5-year deal, so it's not like he's going to be changing anytime soon. It's not like Pete Carroll,
and he's
got
Brady's
a
boy.
3-year deal, and then you got to replace him. So how long do you want to be sitting on the pine before you get that next chance?
No, and I think Edward is correct here. Is Carroll wants his own pick. Carroll wants his own people in place. That said, Ed, the one thing I will disagree with is any well-run organization does not have the head coach select the GM. It's the other way around. The point is that most head coaches report through to the GM. That's generally the way that it works. And the reason, and then, so there's a direct line and then kind of a dotted line, right?
Yeah.
Which is the coach and the GM actually need to work really, really well together. And so if you have a really, really senior head coach, the coach typically doesn't hire the GM, but the GM and coach have to be like kind of hired somewhat in tandem with somewhat of a unified vision, just because they need to work together so closely in order to build a successful football team.
There was kind of a unique scenario with LA in the hiring. It's like they brought in Jim and I think it was, God, and I could be wrong with this. I think they brought in Jim first and then Joe second, and Joe as the GM. And it's like Jim got recommendations from his brother, John, and was like, okay, we got this guy, Joe. He's been with the Ravens for 20 plus years, and he's worked his way up from the bottom all the way to the top, and he's not going to take over for the Ravens GM. They've got a great GM. Ozzie Newsome, I believe that's their current GM. Right? I'm pretty sure that's who 90%.
I thought he retired.
Yeah, he
Not
retired
Ozzie.
after they drafted their quarterback. That was his
Not
last
Ozzie.
year.
It's what's his name? Why did I say Ozzie? DaCosta. But so he wasn't going to take that, so he came to LA, and Jim kind of, he's silly. He's got his Harbaugh'isms, but he's like Joe is Batman and I'm Robin, and that he's like, and is it that way really? Not really. I bet. I'm sure Jim says he wants somebody. Joe will get it. But what we saw as a Chargers fan, it was a breath of fresh air, and Joe is out there swinging all off season, all during the season. So I think he's got a bright future. But going back to Champ Kelly, I feel bad. That's a dirty business. I feel bad for him because it's not like GM jobs open up all the time. They seem to be a little more locked in other than head coaches and stuff.
Well, and I wonder too, like how much of, like I kind of think of the, Eric Bieniemy when he was trying to, get head coaching jobs and was constantly in the cycle for interviews and never got one. And it was like, you always thought with him, like, well, the stigma must be, Andy Reid's running the show. Or it's not really anything he's doing, and then maybe same with like Kelly. You think just because he's never had that official, GM title is, are other teams pushing back of like, well, how much of involvement does he really have in these decisions? And, is that impeding his ability? And then, it just came to a point like, okay, I'm not getting the Jaguars job, probably for some line of reasoning along that, line. I'm going to tell the Raiders, like, I just want out so I can try to make my own path and not be tied to this, assistant, like just being in the room aura that he has right now.
It does make you wonder, because you got to think about it. He's was the third GM that's coming in that he's gotten passed over.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Ziegler, and then you got Telesco, and now you got Spycheck. So it's like, how many times, can a guy like just say, okay, you're good, but you're not good enough to get it?
Yeah, because I mean, eventually it came to the point with Bieniemy too. Like, even when things were good, he had to go branch off and get his own role. And then, I mean, he's in the college ranks now, but it's like, you look at it like, why would you leave being the offensive coordinator for, this team that's on this amazing run? Well, it's because he's thinking about his own future, and that's not going to be progressed when you're kind of looked at as like the stepchild of the situation, right? Like, you're there by association more than anything you're doing.
I think that's fair. The other thing that Kelly needs to get himself into a situation. I have two comments on him, and I'll throw over to Angelo. Thank you for joining, my man. Good to have you here. The Super Bowl savant himself has rejoined the show. The Oracle of the Super Bowl.
Aboard, my brother.
So
we're not worthy.
And I mean, the good news is none of us are going to be Neo coming to you looking for advice either. So that's a good thing. But anywho, I know Kung Fu. But with regards to, we have to do movie references on the show. It's a mandatory thing.
We do.
It's what we do. But so one thing on Champ Kelly, he needs to get to a team where he can be the second in command on a team that ends up doing well or completely changing things over. And so what I mean by that is he's got to go to a team, say he comes back to the Broncos, or say he goes to like a team like the Jags or like the New York Jets or someone like that, where they are not doing particularly well, but they end up getting the right regime changes in. He gets in line with a good GM, and then he is seen as the next best thing to the guy that's there, right? He's got to kind of be seen as that guy. And so right now there's an opening with the Denver Broncos because George Payton's right-hand guy has now left to be a GM elsewhere. And so there is that kind of opening and void. I actually think it's going to be the lady whose name escapes my mind right now. She was actually being sought after as a potential GM hired, and she would actually be the first female GM in the NFL if she was hired. She is like within that assistant GM for sure role, and she is very, very well respected league wide. But like a Champ Kelly or someone like her would certainly be in that kind of next man up, so to speak, kind of role. And if George Payton, along with Sean Payton, can field a team, maybe get the Broncos deep into the playoffs and look incredibly competitive this next offseason, he could be seen, or she could be seen, to be quite honest, depending on, A versus B, as, well, they've been there rebuilding the Broncos now to bring them back into competitiveness. George Payton he's not going anywhere, but we'll go after the right-hand man again. And especially if George Payton's second in command that has just moved on to the other team actually has a good draft and starts to really turn that team around too, there will certainly be that like coaching tree, except front office build up there from George Payton in terms of how to run things, etc. An example like that, I think, is what Champ Kelly needs to go to, so he is seen as the guy and not seen as perhaps a problem or a challenge. With regards to your comment, Alex, about him interviewing, being overlooked, et cetera, the one challenge that a lot of really analytical guys often have is they're boring.
Yeah.
Like they are just dry as toast. Like it's just like, and then I'm gonna look at this. Like they speak in like one tone. Yeah,
I'm gonna look at the length of his fingers and
it's like, and then we're gonna do this, but then you analyze, and then the guy's just like looking at you,
just like, holy hell.
yeah. It's like, oh god,
Get this
okay,
guy out of the room.
yeah. But the thing is that just because he might be boring, and you start questioning how his personal life is going. Just because all of those things may in fact be true, it doesn't mean that they're not really good at their job. It just means that they may not have the salesman personality that you would have hoped for, right? Because, let's be honest, Bill Belichick was no used car salesman when he was speaking to the press. Okay? That dude was dry as toast, but it almost became comical when he was speaking to the press. Like it was legitimately funny.
It was so dry, it was entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
My favorite part with Bill was like if you were playing him, like how he talked about his opponents upcoming that week. He talked about no matter who he was playing, it could have been like the 2 and 10 Jags
0
or
and 0 and 15.
He would talk
Browns.
to them like
Browns.
they were like 3-time world champion, like they were the defending Super Bowl. It was crazy. You'd be like, oh man, we're really this good, and then you go into Foxborough and you're like, oh Jesus, it's like the second quarter and it's already like over, and you're like, God damn it, man. But he was good.
It's like whatever player he talked about too is like that's the one he's specifically targeting in the game.
Yes,
Like,
100%.
So great at defending the pass. We're gonna throw it him 50 times.
Yes, he was like,
it was a psychological warfare with him.
Yeah, but that's exactly what my point is, right? Is that you have kind of two things. I think Champ Kelly will eventually become a GM. I just think he needs to get himself into that situation that I mentioned earlier. Flip side, though, I do think, and I do question whether or not he's got that unfortunate personality trait.
That pizzazz. Dude, speaking of this, have you guys seen the stuff on this?
That's wild. I think he needs to sue Adam Schefter and that other guy.
Oh, he needs to sue everyone.
That other offensive lineman for just trying to prolong his career.
He got suspended, didn't he? I mean, he got suspended
for a year, I think, right?
Why he got kicked off the team.
Yeah, I think for a year, and then he maybe played one place else and retired.
Played for the Raiders.
Yeah,
he came to the Raiders for he was there for 2 years or 3 years, I think.
Oh yeah, with Gruden.
And he was a beast. I mean,
he was
nasty and
Oh,
aggressive.
he was awesome.
And he was a good lineman.
In Miami,
Cornhusker, baby. He was on a lot of teams, but that was in Miami. It was with
Pouncey and the Pouncey twins and
what's it, Jonathan Martin or who was it?
It was Jonathan Martin.
Yeah,
Martin.
Who basically just sucked. Being as Incognito's gone ham on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, but he's like, dude couldn't cut in the NFL, so his mom bitched about bullying. I'm like, damn.
Dude, seriously, but I remember when this was going on.
No,
when this came
up
out.
Florio comment.
Yeah. I remember when all this was going on. I'm like, dude, this guy sounds like a POS.
Bleep
right?
that out.
Boom.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, this guy seems like a POS, and I think he then came to the Raiders later on, and I was like, oh, this guy, and then all this stuff's coming out, and I'm like, whoa, this is why we can't be so quick to react, because there's always these two sides to stories, and it feels like, especially in the NFL these days, there's this whole narrative pushed on us normal fans. And, players can't say anything because if they do, I mean, Goodell just opens up that checkbook, or not the lack of, they open your checkbook and we're going to fine your ass for something. So
I agree. Actually, I completely agree with that.
Ridiculous.
Well, Incognito too. I mean, the Raiders brought him, in the offseason to look at the offensive lineman, in training camp. I mean, that's how much the Raiders like him. But I can only imagine with the Blitnikoff rule, if you're a domestic abuser, and there's even any wind on that, the Raiders will not touch you. You just will not be touched because of what happened to Fred Blitnikoff's daughter. So, I mean, it just plays big in people's careers. And
it's obviously not a Ravens rule, but Raiders, that's good to know. Nobody got that joke, did they?
Oh, I picked up what you were putting down.
Well, that's why it's not. That's why he never came over. He never got a shot.
But so here's the issue that I have with this, and I think this is a super important piece. I remain consistent when I comment on X. Is I want the information about the problem, right? And I'll throw it to Angelo here once I'm done here. I want the information of the issue. I want the details. I'm not just going to take the victim's account and say, of course that's correct. Because especially today's narrative, because, you know, a lot of the times the first person to come out is completely skewing things in their favor, as you would expect them to. And, you know, who's not going to try to skew something in your own favor? And I think it's important that we as fans simply give enough latitude here.
How was that? Someone just break in?
Well, I also think it's kind of funny like a 6'5",
He's talking to too many Americans.
Sounded like a raid. You get swatted.
Canada's going to raid his ass.
He got swatted.
He's got swatted by the Mounties.
That'd be fun.
What's going on, eh?
That'd be fun. Woo woo.
Coming in on horses and everything.
Oh, that'd be great. Oh, can you imagine? Oh, that'd be so cool. Can you imagine like the Canadian cavalry coming down?
And Richie just goes, "I'll be right back. I'm back."
Comes out with his MAGA hat on.
But I just think it's really important that we just be very careful before we jump to conclusions on these things. And I think that we have seen enough evidence of enough of these scenarios play out that a lot of things that were played out in the court of public opinion turned out to be completely false. I mean, I think you can. No, there's been some of them that have been completely legit, like the Weinstein case and all that kind of stuff. And Ray Rice, Ray Rice was basically.
I thought we were talking about incognito. Yeah, never mind.
But then you have the incognito case. It's certainly looking like it's completely not what it really was. And then you're looking, or massive details were completely omitted intentionally, and then a certain narrative is played out. You've seen a whole bunch of other cases that were tried in the court of public opinion. I mean, I think the biggest one of an example like this was the Johnny Depp case, where everyone in the court of public opinion basically started just raking that dude over the coals. And then it came out that he was the actual victim, not the actual perpetrator for the most part. And it's like
dumped on his bed.
Yeah, and it's like I just think that we need to be very, very careful before we jump down people's throats and assuming things until we have all the facts, because sometimes the truth will set you free, as the saying goes. Angela, what do you think?
So full disclosure, because I missed the first part of the whole show, but you guys are talking about Champ Kelly.
Yes.
My actual question was, does anyone in here know, because I've been asking this and I haven't done the research yet. So I thought that the NFL has this rule where if we develop a DEI coach or front office person, and that person were to get hired by another team at an elevated role of GM or head coach, that we as a team would get a compensatory pick. So my question then, my question, DZ, is if that is true, which I read it somewhere, if it is true, by us letting Champ Kelly go, does that no longer applies if he all of a sudden gets hired by the Broncos or by the Jaguars or something?
Well, that's a whole thing, Angelo. If he would have got hired by the Jags as the GM, then the Raiders would have gotten 2 third-round picks.
Oh, what?
But not in the same year. It's one after the other.
Yeah.
One this year, one next year.
But now, since he didn't get the job and they parted ways, he's a free agent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Be the same thing as like you just release a player and he signs somewhere. I mean, it's no
the Rooney rule is what you're talking about, right?
So that's part of the Rooney rule. It was a modification to the Rooney rule. And you're right. So if you developed Champ Kelly and he were to go, let's say he got the Jags role, right? Your team would get back-to-back years of a compensatory pick.
In the third round, which I understand.
In the third round.
Yes.
In the third round.
like super.
So you're
valuable
basically
picks.
telling me that whatever is out there, Champ Kelly apparently was so bad that the Raiders was willing to let 2 compensatory 3rd-round picks go when they could have just said, "Hey, man, I guess we'll just keep
those
on."
picks.
They could have promoted
that's what
him
I'm saying
instead
is-
of Spytek, and then I think they would have. I have to double check the way that is, but I think that by hiring him, I believe they would have also received a compensatory pick if they had hired him as their GM as well. I believe that also works
Really?
the same way. I think so.
That'd be kind of wild because
Yeah, then why wouldn't people would just be doing that to get some picks,
that's what
you
I
know?
was thinking. Is it's like, well, how stupid is that move? Because you could have just retained Champ Kelly as the assistant GM until someone were to ask him to become the GM.
I feel like that's the way they go. They would have, Brady would have been savvy enough to be like, all right, Champ Kelly, you're the GM. Spytek, you're the assistant GM, but you're really not. Give us 2 more thirds.
Now, do we know if the Jags were the only opening for GM, right?
I think that was just the only one he reviewed for, or I don't know if
Interviewed for.
I mean, no,
We don't know of any other
Tennessee
open ones,
Titans fired their GM.
but I think they already hired.
Yeah, no,
him.
I know Tennessee. That's why I was saying that they're going to blow the number 1 pick because they're going to hire somebody, and then that somebody's got to make a panic move. They're going to make a panic move instead of doing the right thing. Like, this is the year where I was telling you guys the last time I was on the show, I was saying it's Abdul Carter no matter what. Like, that's
Jags and Jets.
That's not a wrong move.
That would be my first
Oh,
pick.
Yeah,
sorry,
it's just
I
that
was
you won't
mistaken.
get fired for that move. You know what I'm saying? Like, no
I was
one's going to
mistaken.
fire you because you picked the best available player
What
since
is it,
Myles
Rich?
Garrett.
I was mistaken. It was in discussions, but was never passed. So there was apparently some grumblings and rumblings of if you promote or hire a minority GM or head coach within the team, there was thoughts that you would get a single compensatory pick. However, if you develop, as in bring up and elevate a minority, whether it be head coach or general manager, your team who develops that coach gets 2 compensatory picks in back-to-back years. So it's the 3rd-round compensatory pick in, say, the year, the offseason following, and then another one the following offseason. And that's the way that rule works, and that's how the modifications played out. They had spoken about adding an internal promotional component to it, and they didn't do it.
Shout your man out, kid. Come on.
Love you, Pena. Yeah, he's my brother.
There we go.
No, Pena's a good dude. In fact. No,
Actually,
so
all the Raider fans in here, dude. I've seen all these guys on different shows. So salute out to all the Raider Nation.
Jags and Jets, DZ, are the open GM spots.
Jets are still open.
I also want to thank Richie for sending me the link because I didn't expect the link to come today, and then I saw it kind of late. And thank you for all the props. I did listen to the show, and thank you. I mean, it's pretty crazy, I guess, that like you said. What was it, Alex, that you said? Every once in a while,
a broken clock is right twice a day.
Twice a day, yeah. But I mean, again, the way that DZ, the way I said it was exactly how it played itself out. Even to the half, I said at the half, the Chiefs are either going to have 0 or at most 3 points. And then it's going to end up being one of those where 37-25, I believe, was my prediction. And I said, but it won't even feel that close because it'll be that far away. And I honestly, like, if I was a betting person, I would have went and I would have said $1,000 on this, right? But I'm not a gambling person, people. So
I was as that game was like coming to an end, I was like, that fucker was right. I was like, how in the hell? I was like, man, I could have put some money on this. I was like, because I remember as soon as you said that, I came back at you and I'm like, there's no way. I'm not betting against Reed and Spags. And I mean,
not with that point spread.
I'll tell you what it was is when we were doing that show, and even the way Richie was explaining, help me out again, Rich, the defensive coach's name.
Fangio.
Thank you. Yeah. So when he was like kind of explaining all of that, like that already was a good enough hint to kind of understand that the Chiefs were not going to do as well. But my whole point to it, and what I was saying to Alex, was the Chiefs this year, if you looked at every game, was barely getting away with it. They won, but they were barely getting away with it. Versus the Eagles were rolling people, and they just kept rolling people. And it felt like Ohio State, man. I was like, damn, these guys got hella weapons. So the biggest shock to me this year, which is why I'm so big on the draft, is look what the Eagles did. They picked up 2 back-to-back defensive backs who happened to both. One of them is a shutdown guy. Like, I knew Quinyon Mitchell would be good based on what I saw on like Senior Bowl and all of that, but I didn't think he was going to be a shutdown corner. And then Cooper DeJean, dude.
Yeah, it's white boy summer. It's definitely going to be white boy summer with Cooper DeJean giving all of us white boys some hope.
Dude, I mean, like Cooper DeJean. I remember talking to Stuart Schwaggart about Cooper DeJean, and he was saying, no, this guy's legit. But I didn't know he was going to be like, that's a steal, man. Like that guy was
before then.
You picked him up in the second round.
Our pick was Carter, right? And they got Carter, and then they got the other guy from Georgia the year before,
Davis.
So they went back-to-back years on the defensive tackles, and they go back-to-back on the defensive backs. Put your pressure up front, get your guys in the back.
But let's not forget that these guys, the Eagles, also technically gave up 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, that's true.
To get Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, AJ, because they struck out with Jalen Reagor.
Right, but also though they got part of the reason why they were able to do the Devontae Smith pick is that was part of that whole Carson Wentz deal. So like that's one of those things where I have to give credit to the Eagles organization, just the organization in itself, from Howie Roseman to the owner because in the Raider Nation guys in the chat, this, we're always complaining about like, oh, Tyree Wilson blank. I'll guarantee you right now, guys, if Tyree Wilson was picked up by the Eagles, that guy would be playing in the Super Bowl right now because coaches, not revolving doors of administration, not revolving doors of coaching, consistency and actually training your players matter. They all matter. Like you can't just there's not one person in this draft. Maybe Ashton Genty is the one guy I might say, and Abdul Carter. Ashton Genty, and probably Mason Graham are the 3 guys who I would say, if you get them as a rookie, they don't need any training.
Just talking about like surefire, like day one starters.
They're day one. Like you can put them in a garbage team and they'll still produce numbers, right? So to us, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just gonna say this. That was Brock Bowers. So thank you to Telesco, because that was doesn't matter. He doesn't need any developing. He just picked that guy and he can
Angelo, what are you saying about your team?
No. I'm saying that we just the nation itself needs to stop complaining about players that we picked up and then they don't pan out. So, like, for example, one of the narratives right now is, well, the last time we took a first-round quarterback that had a father issue, and this is why we don't want to deal with Shador, is Matt Marinovich. And I do remember that Matt Marinovich was pretty freaking good as a talent. I don't know if I would have gotten him that high, obviously, but I'm just saying that part of that whole thing.
It was the supplemental draft, though.
Yeah. Part of that whole thing is still about who are we developing, right? Who are we developing? So this year, I'm perfectly happy with Spytek being the whiz kid that he is. If that's what everybody's going with, fine, great. I'm perfectly happy with Pete Carroll. So we at least know that he won't get fired. So the only thing I hope is he doesn't die between now and the next 3 years. All right. So I mean, I'm just being real. He's going to hit 77 by the time he gets to the option contract. If he finishes it, he'll be 78.
Mid 70s guy for sure.
Yeah,
all right.
We have the 4 oldest coaches out of like the top 5 in the league right now are all in the AFC West.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Also been to or won a Super Bowl.
Coaches is so impressive.
At least one.
Yeah.
Right.
Like at least one across the board, right? So yeah.
So anyway, though, and here's the last thing I'll say about me being right about the Super Bowl. Part of the reason why I knew, like I just knew that shit was gonna happen, guys, is the Raiders have been showing everyone how to literally get after Patrick Mahomes for the last 2 years. They have shown it. They have improved on it. They show you how you can NASCAR the shit out of him, and he panics. And even last year or this past season, Alex, when you guys beat us, really, dude, that was a winnable game, as shitty as our team was going into you guys. So that's like me saying, here's a boxer who's got called as a last-minute opponent who's supposed to beat the champion or who's supposed to not beat the champion and get rolled, and we somehow took you to 12 rounds. Like, that's how I equated the Raiders going against the Chiefs this year. So when I was like, damn, man, the Eagles front four, remember I kept saying that, DZ? That Eagles front four is crazy. That's all they, and then the fact that, like what you said, Rich, about Fangio, like he was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm a rush 4 and I'll let Patrick Mahomes beat me. Go ahead. And we saw his script. Like, Patrick Mahomes is awesome, man, but he got used to throwing haymakers. Like, Patrick Mahomes has been such a great knockout guy for so many years that he got used to the fact that all you have to do is do a knockout and you'll somehow win. And you know for a fact, Alex, that's not the way to quarterback, dude. He should, if he would have just picked and popped like, you know, good quarterbacks do, like a Tom Brady does, right?
I mean,
like,
he is a good quarterback, Andrew.
I know.
Draw the line right there. He's won 3 Super Bowls. You would absolutely trade your whole franchise for Patrick Mahomes to be your quarterback. So don't act like you wouldn't.
Well,
okay. And it wasn't really that he couldn't stand back there and pick and prod the coverage. He had no time.
Okay, but no. But here's my point, though. All right, so no, that's a fair statement. Except I will say this. In my opinion, I still believe Joe Burrow is the better quarterback over Patrick Mahomes. And the only reason why Joe Burrow doesn't get the same great stuff is 2 things, which isn't in Patrick Mahomes' control. One is injury prone in his rookie times. He's been injured twice. Second is his fucking team doesn't really support him. But if you honestly tell me, though, if Joe Burrow was in the same exact scenario and you switch them with Patrick Mahomes would still be amazing for the Bengals. He would. But he might have taken the Bengals to 1 Super Bowl.
Does Patrick Mahomes wear?
On the other hand, Joe Burrow would have dominated this whole fucking league, as he just proved this year.
I don't see Patrick Mahomes wearing backless shirts and dressing up like Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah,
that's I don't know, man. This glazing for Burrow is driving me crazy.
Well, I mean,
he's good though, bro.
He's good. He's good. He added notoriety because he beat Mahomes in the playoffs to go to a Super Bowl.
But it's not just
the only guy to do that.
Look at who.
But I mean, that's definitely added to it. Like, what do people say about Josh Allen? So amazing. Like, he is
Josh Allen wasn't the Heisman Trophy winner,
but he's never been able to beat Mahomes, and that's always the thing they say about him. What do people say about Burrow? Oh, he's beaten Mahomes. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's been the one guy to do it in the AFC.
Okay, but let's say he didn't beat Mahomes. Let's just pretend. Okay, just look at his stats for this year. Of all the quarterbacks, dude, that was crazy. The guy threw for over 4,000 yards
because they didn't have a defense.
Getting his team to
they had to do that. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying.
Look at the Bengals' weapons, though. I mean, they got 2 of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but here's the thing, though, Angelo. Here, let me look at it. I'm gonna bring it back to the Broncos and keep it back in the AFC West, and then kind of compare it over to Joe Burrow. So I'm looking at what Peyton Manning did in 2013. Peyton Manning in 2013 had a mediocre at best defense, but man, did he light that offense on fire.
What year did you just say,
Cowtown?
Pardon me?
Explain.
2013.
Okay.
Right? Peyton Manning set like records that year. We had something, I can't remember, like it was like 4 players that had either like 1,000
touchdowns. And
55 touchdowns.
Yards.
Yeah, it was like something stupid, right? It was
I'm like digging through the file cabinets in my head now about.
So when they played the Seahawks in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was when they played the Seahawks in the Super Bowl and got absolutely smoked, right? It got absolutely smoked. It was very similar to what we saw the Eagles and the Chiefs, except the Broncos were even worse than the Chiefs were when they played. Like the Chiefs actually came back and made it like look more competitive as a score. The Broncos wished they could have scored in that game. Was kind of the way that it worked. So that's what I kind of look at what's happened there. I'm looking at Burrow and I'm seeing what he's doing. Burrow to me is the equivalent of the Bosas. You can objectively you can objectively look at them and say they should be better than they are. When they are put in positions where they need to do the thing, they can actually do it and do it at a high level. But inevitably, because they drink girly drinks and wear crop tops, they get hurt.
I mean, dude,
okay, like,
Yeah.
like, dude, the Bosa brothers are drinking Smirnoff ice drinks. Okay, I've seen them in their hands. They can't deny it. It's video evidence. The dude's got to grow up, grow a pair, and drink a Guinness. Okay, he won't get hurt because iron is good for you. Okay, this is the problem. Like, they got to stop doing crazy things. They got to stop. You know, there's just some things you do and some things you don't do. And I think the problem that Joe Burrow has is I actually think that he enjoys the fame more than the work that goes into the game. And I unintentionally rhymed when I said that, but I genuinely meant what I said.
He just
the
likes
Home
his
Alone
friends'
royalties stopped coming in, so
And so now when you look at Mahomes though, and this is where Angelo, we agree in a lot, but where we disagree, we can at least do so respectfully, and I think that's fair, is Joe Burrow is nowhere near Mahomes. I'm sorry, he is just not. Joe Burrow was put in a position this year like Peyton Manning was in 2013.
Right.
If you didn't do the thing, you couldn't do the thing. The point is that inevitably you are going to hit the buzzsaw because you're forced to do the thing in the regular season, and the postseason is a different animal.
Right. And just factually, where I would disagree on the Peyton Manning to Burrow comparison, respectfully, from 2013 to this year, is Joe Burrow had to go through the AFC fucking North, which is the Steelers and the Ravens, right? And again, respectfully to 2013
And the Browns.
Broncos.
And the Browns.
The Raiders, dude. And I mean, was Kansas even
did.
good that year? You know what I'm saying? Like, of course he was going to make it. But is anyone in this room right now, or anyone in the chat, believe that if Joe Burrow's Bengals would have snuck into the playoffs, who was the scariest team that everybody did not want to play? Angelo, including Alex, your fucking Chiefs, who chose not to play anyone good to make sure that the Bengals don't even get a chance, bro.
The way they were rolling, Angelo, you're right.
They were getting hot at the right time, but they also
really
start
hot.
every year 0-5. So,
Yeah.
they set their own destiny a little bit.
Well,
Burrow gets hurt. I don't disagree with you. I mean, Joe Burrow is an elite QB, and he is, and there is no saying what you do if you put Burrow or Josh Allen or any of these, or Lamar even, with Andy Reid in the supporting cast, and could it be the same outcome that we've seen now? Pretty good chance of that. But
it was,
because I'm a firm believer that where a QB, especially QB, lands is a big indicator of how their career is going to be. Like if Mahomes was the first QB taken in his draft and went to Chicago, I don't know. I cannot say with a sliver of confidence that he is going to be Patrick Mahomes that we know today. And that's because of the supporting cast. But I mean, I agree with you in that stuff.
Put a vote down there. Put a vote.
Let me make this point
Mahomes
too, Jack.
Or Burrows. Who would you rather have for your?
I actually like that idea, Jack.
Before we do that.
I actually like that idea. I want the chat to chime in.
Yeah.
We got a Burrow versus Mahomes.
All right.
We also got a lot of Raiders fans. They're going to say,
this is a very Raider dominant.
Hey,
Let me throw this one thing out there too.
I'm not on the Burrow train, dude. I'm on.
Hold on. Time out though, Jack. Let me throw this one at too with what Alex was saying about depending on the situation that a quarterback goes into. So are we no longer? I mean, because I've been thinking about this since the Super Bowl. Is if we're just talking stats and we're just talking facts, shouldn't we already be talking about the fact that maybe Jalen Hurts is one of the top 4 right now? Because in the 5 years that he's been there, in the last 3 years, he went to 2 Super Bowls. He already won one of them.
I know he's not.
He's only 26 years old.
He is
and hold
not
on.
doing
I'm not done, dude. I'm not done. And Nick Sirianni, dude. I mean, Nick Sirianni's only coached them for 4 years, I think, right?
Sirianni isn't running things,
and
man.
he's already been in the 2 Super Bowls and the playoffs every single time. So I don't know, man. I mean,
But
like, if we're
also
talking,
go look if you're talking stats. Burrow or Hurts' stats are I run the ball and I get shoved into the end zone by my offensive line and running backs. And sometimes am a complete liability throwing the ball, which was apparent several times this year. So he is.
Do you
one
believe that if
he
Justin
is
Fields,
he is the epitome of going into the right situation? If you put
Justin
Jalen
Fields
Hurts
was in that situation, would he have taken him to the Super Bowl twice?
Who?
maybe
Justin Fields.
I think
Sure.
Justin Fields has a better arm than Jalen
Fields can
Hurts.
throw 1 or 2 lucky fucking passes just like Hurts did, and uses his legs just like Hurts does. Like, the Eagles win not because of Jalen Hurts. They win because of that team, how that team is constructed, and their coaching. What's JK? Okay. Anyways, I don't think Hurts. I actually like Hurts. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a heck of a QB, but these comments about him getting the Super Bowl, it's so biased and it's just clickbait BS, dude, because they like all these good QBs that are put in crappy situations, crappy organizations. And I hate to say this, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for it, dude. I'm going to get a flack for it. Like, their QBs, there's 2 QBs that just popped in my head. They're still super young, but one is kind of in that age range. I'm not. So there's Drake May, right? He's young, so he's still got some years before people, because you've got around. And there's another guy, and I don't like their fan base, but it's Trevor Lawrence.
Okay.
I think he's a good QB, and then he's just had some crappy situations.
He had all the boxes coming into
terrible.
the draft.
It's
terrible.
So, and it's just like, now people are like, Jalen Hurts, he's been in the Super Bowl twice. He's won a Super Bowl. And I'm like, dude, yeah, he's a good QB, but look at that team, bro. Like, look at that team.
No.
There's like,
you're absolutely right. And you can keep going with what you're saying. I just want to throw this one out because these are just facts, dude. So it's always forgotten that Jalen Hurts was the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy when Joe Burrow got it. So that's how good he was that year.
sure.
Just
And then
saying,
Alabama
okay?
benched him in the national
secondly,
championship game,
hold on.
and he went to Oklahoma.
Come on, Alex. Just hold on.
I
All
know,
right.
I'm just saying.
Now, secondly, and again, this is just facts. If we're saying the same things we're saying about, Jalen Hurts, he runs and blah, blah, blah. You can't deny the facts of his first Super Bowl and how many touchdown throws he actually threw for, and he dominated that game. And he arguably could have been the Super Bowl MVP even with the loss. That's how good he was in that first game. In the second game, he wins. And anyone can say, they had Saquon and blah, blah, blah. Well, if we're doing that comparison, then didn't Lamar Jackson have the same exact thing? And Lamar Jackson is supposed to be the better QB than Jalen Hurts. Last time I checked, though, Lamar Jackson hasn't been to 2 Super Bowls. And Jalen
Lamar
Hurts
Jackson
has.
doesn't have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and elite
That
supporting
offensive line
defense.
or
And look,
that
I'm
an
gonna say
offensive
it,
line.
He did, Alex. I can
I'm gonna
argue
say
that
it.
this year he did. This
I'm
year,
gonna
they
say
were
it.
that
Who did he have that was equivalent to A.J. Brown to throw the ball to?
Dude, Zay Flowers was awesome up until he got injured, but he was amazing.
Yeah, but Zay's not an.
I mean,
Zay's not an X.
I hear what you're saying, and
AJ
Hurts
Brown's
is
an
definitely
X.
going to get that praise because he is the winning QB. But like in the first Super Bowl, he fumbled the ball that gave up a touchdown that basically turned the game. So I mean, he arguably changed the pace of the game, despite how good he played. And in the second one, Mahomes had better numbers than he did, outside of his interceptions.
So Alex, this is kind of where I'm going to agree with Alex a little bit on some of this, and this is kind of what separates. We've had this discussion, Alex. Actually, I think Angela, you and I had this discussion, whether it be on here or on Captain's Show, I pretty much will go anywhere just because that's just the way I roll. In terms of good and great quarterbacks, and I actually think that's what we're really talking about here, is that there's a grouping of quarterbacks that are in this upper tier. By the way, I don't put Lamar Jackson in that upper tier.
Okay.
I do, however, put Patrick Mahomes in that upper tier.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Like, it is just undeniable at this point that he is in that upper tier. And the reason why I believe that there's this, it's literally that extra step that thou must climb as a quarterback in terms of getting from that tier to that tier. And that is making that clutch decision when it matters most. So as an example, I absolutely put Mahomes in that. I put a guy like Brady in that. I put a guy like Peyton Manning in that category. I put a handful of quarterbacks over the years in this upper tier that is elevated above a lot of their peers. And why do I put them there? One, when they're in the position that Hurts was in, when they're in a position that Josh Allen was in when they played the Chiefs, they don't make the stupid decision. They don't fumble the ball on the snap. They don't misthrow the ball when they have a wide open receiver that gets picked that basically seals the game in their, like, against their team. I'm not saying that they shouldn't get credit for the absolute amazing play that they otherwise or typically normally have. But the point is, when the game is on the line, when the game matters most, the differentiating step between the guys that are here and the guys that are here, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, like, there's this upper tier of quarterbacks. There's a reason why they're all first ballot gold jacket guys, is because when that decision was put before them and they were put and had been put in the toughest situations and having to make those difficult choices, they don't flinch and they make the right choice, period. So you and I may agree, we may agree to disagree, but I think that is a differentiator between A and B. You can agree that Joe Burrow has got godly stats, but guess what? He still makes some boneheaded choices and boneheaded plays, and he gets hurt a lot. And that I actually equate to making boneheaded choices and boneheaded plays in the offseason, right?
That's
because
fair.
So again, like, there's on and off the field. Two things can be true. You can make really good choices on the field, but be an idiot off the field, and you're still going to get hurt eventually on the field for your off the field decisions. And then you end up with other guys that do really, really well off the field, but then literally are like just a bag of rocks for brains, and they end up throwing the ball to the other team more than they ought to. And like, these are all things that need to be factored in. That's funny. But these are all things that need to be factored into kind of how we're assessing quarterbacks, because there's a clutch gene, which you hear in some of the broadcasts and things like that some guys have and some guys don't. A lot of guys, when they get in those absolute pressure cooker situations, they just don't mess up.
Right.
Hey, Cowtown. I'm one of them, bro.
You better hope
Downtown
that
with
he
the
doesn't come back.
shiv on the way out.
Cowtown. I'm not trying to like put DZ on the spot here, but another example of a guy that was kind of like that, was a great quarterback, was Phillip Rivers.
Ooh, that's my boy, man.
Phillip Rivers was here. And here, I'll equate this back to our conversation.
That's my boy.
Kind of
Angelo.
do your analysis of Joe Burrow, honestly, like gaudy numbers, but sometimes makes a bonehead
Exactly,
decision.
100%. That's exactly what I was about to say. He's exactly in that camp. Phillip Rivers is in that one tier below that next step up. He's in that group. He
That's
has
what
Phillip
all,
Rivers made it to one Super Bowl, though, right? DZ, or was it two?
No,
AFC
nothing.
Championship game.
AFC
Oh, he didn't make
Championship,
it
that's
to the Super Bowl? Oh,
they lost
The
to
shit.
thing that
Brady.
sucks.
No,
The thing that sucks
Angelo,
about
Chargers have never been to a Super Bowl.
No,
Yes,
they
we
went
have.
with
Or,
they
they
went
never won
94.
one, I should say that.
Angelo,
94, we got
there's a
mollywopped by the
reason for that,
Niners.
though. See,
Jerry
the problem
Rice and
is
Steve Young.
he was already thinking about how his next kid was going to be procreated, and he just couldn't get past that AFC game, and it was just an unfortunate set of events.
To be fair, he had I think he had 3 kids adopted. I'm not sure. I think he
that's
took
cool.
like 8
Still a
kids.
lot.
He's
Hey, man,
Catholic.
when those
He's a-
kids are all ready to play ball, you guys are going to be circling back.
Dude,
Yeah.
he's his son's high school football coach at a private school in Alabama.
Oh,
Yes.
that's awesome.
His son is gonna be
They
Like,
probably throw the ball 85 times a game.
yeah.
That's
I mean, his son throws the ball like him too, which is kind of weird, which is something you don't
Funny.
want a kid doing. No, I love Rivers, and I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he makes it into the Hall of Fame, unfortunately. I mean, Gates was a second. It took him the second year to get in. And I think that had to do with he had like one PED suspension in his career, and I think they took that in grand. But Philip Rivers, to this day, as a lifelong Chargers fan, is my favorite player, and
Okay.
that's up there with Gates
Dang.
and Sayal and all
And
this. And the
LT?
reason, the
And
reason
LT,
why,
bro?
yep,
Wow.
he's over all of them. And the reason I say that is because Rivers came in, he wasn't the most
That's the guy
athletically
nobody
gifted.
wanted.
Yeah, he wasn't athletically gifted. And towards the end of his career, the dude had like no knees left, but he was extremely intelligent about reading defenses. And he's just so passionate. I just loved listening to that guy talk. His pressers, going into games and after games, he was emotional. He left everything out on the field, and he was just like, to me, he was like the epitome of like a blue collar quarterback, man. He was like if you wanted to make a movie, if he would have won a Super Bowl, you could have made that Kurt Warner movie about Philip Rivers, in my opinion. Like, kind of, I mean, he didn't play arena ball or anything like that, but that's just the type of character he was. But
Well,
And
here,
his trash talking was epic.
yeah, I mean, he
these
didn't
that-
cuss. He didn't
I know.
cuss. It was so
He was-
weird.
He was great.
He's a character.
But
It
he
was
didn't
great.
care. He wasn't afraid. I mean, dude, and it sucked. And I watched the Chargers. I'll get over this real quick, but I watched the Chargers just they were like nickeling and diming him because he was making a lot of money at the time for an organization, and they stopped investing in the O-line and late in his career. And it's like the guy, the only thing he could do was step up into the pocket. He couldn't, there was no bootlegs with River, nothing. He had to step up. And I mean, it broke my heart that he had to go and like retire essentially with the freaking Colts. Like, I'm just like, anyways, that's my rant.
Hey,
on Rivers.
real quick, Rich, can you put up Raider Zach's comment? The difference between Mahomes, bro. All right, so where I'll push back on this is you just put it on paper, Raider Zach, and the fact that you didn't include Hurts in there. Allen's never been to the Super Bowl. Jackson's never been to the Super Bowl. Burrow's been in the Super Bowl once, and Hurts already's been 2 out of 3 in the last 3 years, and has already won one. Man, that's why I was saying, should we be talking about him? No matter how much you like him or hate him, he performed. He performed
in the top 10. Sure, yeah.
He has to.
Put him
He
in the
has to
top
be
10.
in that. He has to be in that top group. Like, I'm going to put
Yeah.
it that way. He has to be in that top group. And now, at the same time, I also think that he may be the fastest to fall out of that top group in terms of how you would rank them, just because he makes those kind of boneheaded choices. It's very much like Romo, for example. Tony Romo, he would always kind of get them right to the edge, right? And then inevitably, because I remember when we played the Cowboys, it was always this is literally how our games always ended with the Cowboys. You could always count on Tony Romo to get flustered in the pocket, make a stupid choice, a stupid decision. Maybe he was already thinking about when his tea time was. I don't know, but he always would make a dumb choice, and he would throw the ball to our defensive backs, and we'd run it back for a pick six. It was literally a guarantee when we played the Cowboys with Romo there.
I like to imagine in those moments when he makes those internally, he's doing what he does when he commentates. He's like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm just gonna throw it here. Oh, it's an interception."
He probably is, actually.
Yeah,
he
he's like,
probably is.
You know, he probably is.
Do you know what'd be great? Is we need to find an old footage of where he throws a pick at the end of the
And
game
cue
like
that
that,
in,
and
cue
then,
that
and then
sound in.
overlay the sound from when he's making. I might be doing that later. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Dude, I want cool Kev, when you show that, have cool Kev say the words. That'd be hilarious.
But anyways, let's quickly go through the topic quickly for today. We're gonna go around here and talk about free agents. We're going to cut it down to one position and one free agent for each of our teams to make this a reasonably length show, just because we do have 4 teams to cover. So I want each of you guys, and I will start with Alex, your number 1 free agency position. Don't go players, just give us the position.
Yeah. So, there's unfortunately, I think, going to be a lot of positions in need for the Chiefs, just with, the 28 pending free agents they have.
Right.
But, looking at where they're at in the draft, what it would cost to move up to get, this position of need in the draft. I think the big free agency position to target for Kansas City is going to be left tackle. And that's from the mindset of them, also bringing Trey Smith back and letting some other big ticket items walk. But you're not going to be able to move up in the draft to replace or get your left tackle of the future without doing a whole lot and giving up much. So I think it's got to be left tackle.
I agree. I was thinking the same thing when we were kind of talking in the green room. That was my mental math for your team as well in terms of.
There you go, Polar Knights. I put it up for you, buddy. Some funny. Kids in Africa got their 3-peat shirts.
We're going to have to touch back on this next week, and we need to go in more depth and go into more positions as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We could go a little bit deeper in that. DZ, let's quickly go get your number 1 free agency position for your Chargers.
Kind of the same situation as Alex. We have high 20s, early 30s amount of pending free agents. Due to Ortiz, they were cap stricken, so they had to sign a lot of guys to 1-year deals. I would say probably the number 1, and I would go against Harbaugh on the grain, I would say would be a weapon, and that weapon would be either wide receiver, running back, tight end. And you're saying as a free agent out there that I'd like? Is that what you also?
We're going to get into that real quick, just position.
Okay, so yeah, it would just be a weapon. It would be wide receiver, tight end, and running back.
Okay.
That's something that
Angelo, and we have 2 Raiders representatives here, so I'm curious to see if you guys are in agreement or not.
We'll have different opinions, I'll guarantee it. So our number 1 position of need, in my opinion, which is different from what the chat is saying, and I think because we're talking about who we're going to get in free agency, right?
It's just the position, not the person yet, just the position.
Yeah, the position that we need to get
the most,
big time, right?
The most,
super important.
Yes.
Because everybody always wants to talk about quarterback. I still believe that it's bullshit no matter what quarterback we get if we can't protect them. I honestly believe that what we need is a guard. Best offensive guard, left or right. But that's who I think we need to get. We need to get the very best.
All right, Jack, what about you?
Angelo, I will say that's number 2.
Same.
Okay.
And yes, I agree with the rest of the nation. It is definitely a quarterback. We need a quarterback because you know what? That's what hurts us the most within being the worst quarterback needy team. And that's all we ever talk about in all the different Raider shows. And I totally agree. We need a quarterback. AOC 12, some people say he can be the bridge. But I see one. We're gonna sign one, and we are gonna also draft one. So a quarterback to compete with these guys, quarterbacks all over here. You gotta have some.
Now, the only reason why I didn't want to go with that one is what Jack is saying. You guys know that I'm a big believer that Aiden O'Connell, if given a fair chance, could actually be pretty good. If given a fair chance. And in the first 2 years of his career, he wasn't given what we would call a fair chance. Hey, man, here's the keys, drive it, right? But even if he was, I would say that he would have still gotten sacked a lot because our O-line sucks that bad. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yep,
Jack,
I do.
Andre James.
Talking about the draft,
guys,
and then certain players.
So,
which we're not going to do on
guys,
this show.
I'm recovering
that
as a liver
conversation right there,
transplant,
too.
and if I rushed Aiden O'Connell, Andre James couldn't block me. I'm just saying.
And that all might be true. I'm going to say that for my Denver Broncos, I actually believe that the number one thing that we need to get in the offseason, and that's just because there isn't a tremendous amount of depth in the draft this year, is to target a wide receiver for Bo Nix. I think that there is not enough depth at the wide receiver position, and I think that my Denver Broncos are going to look at something else in the draft. If I had my way, we'll get into that in a couple shows later. I am very much a build the trenches and then build more trenches and then build even more trenches, because that will win you games. And I just think that there's not enough depth at wide receiver in this draft to allow the Broncos to kind of double dip to get a guy that they're going to want perhaps in the second round. And so I think you target that player in the offseason. Now I'm going to go kind of backwards through our order there. And I'm going to ask Angelo, you said guard, pick one.
Mekhi Becton. That's the guy we pay for, because if anyone would ever sell tons of jerseys, looks like a Raider, can be that guy for the future. Because he's only 25, by the way. He's 25 years old. He's this big giant, but 6'8", 400 pounds. Come on, guys. That's a Raider.
He's huge.
Massive, dude.
Yeah, he's like.
Are you sure he's going to be big enough?
Right.
but Rich, can you just picture it in my head though? Because you're a trenches guy too. So you got JPJ, who's like 330 as the center. Then you put Mekhi Becton right next to him at almost 400, 6'8", right? And then you put Glaze right next to that. If you have a lefty quarterback, that dude is protected. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I mean.
You like him as the right guard versus, a left guard?
I want him at whatever guard position is going to protect the quarterback. So, because I keep hearing the whole Dylan Gabriel thing happening. I don't know if it will or not. I just keep hearing about the Dylan Gabriel thing happening.
No, I actually think that is a very reasonable take if you wanted the Raiders to do better this season. Now, I don't. So I'm quite happy if you threw him out at left tackle or something, but
where he got out of New York,
or maybe just threw him on the practice squad and did nothing with him. I'm totally cool with that too, or just don't get him at all. But no, I actually think that if your North Star there is to do better and be better, I actually think that's a great pickup. The only thing I will say is, oddly enough, your new head coach has in his career actually been a little bit different than the other coaches in our division. So Sean Payton, Harbaugh for sure, and Andy Reid have both shown that's funny. Oh, that's great.
That's good. That's good, wholesome family fun right there.
Yes, yeah, it is. But your coach, Angelo, has typically not valued the offensive line as much as the other coaches in this division. Carroll has built teams slightly less traditionally. He's gone more heavy on defense and kind of gone that direction and building like the defensive juggernaut, which is kind of his forte, right? But he's typically not done the offensive line trenches thing. In fact, that was one of the biggest knocks, if you recall, throughout Russell Wilson's career, is that, if he couldn't run around and scramble like he did, they may have never won a Super Bowl, just because of the fact that they never really did have that elite offensive line. And so it will be interesting to see if Carroll kind of changes his stripes a little bit, because that would certainly be a deviation, but I do like the pick. Jack, your thought in terms of, and Angela, for the record, that's my style of building a team, so I'm obviously going to say yes. But Jack, over to you. What are your thoughts in terms of who you want?
All right, so I want to piggyback off Angelo. I do agree, what Angelo said. So Beckham is my number 2, and the number 1 is this guy. Let me go that way to Alex. So if I had to pick a guy, I think Beckman's going to be a lot cheaper than, Smith, but I would like to see Smith come over, if we're talking guard. But I honestly kind of feel like, I don't want to spend a ton of money. I don't like the free agents. in the way of the quarterbacks, either A, it's not a culture fit. And Aaron Rodgers is not a guy I want to bring over because of the culture. That's the whole thing with Pete Carroll, is to get the culture right, get it straight. It's not what we've had before. Aaron Rodgers is going to mess that up. I think Russell Wilson could be the same thing. Last year, I said it on this show, at $1.8 million, I wanted Russell Wilson because he's cheap. But, it's not going to be the same thing for Aaron Rodgers because it's all about the guaranteed money that's left over. And I just don't think it's a culture fit. So I'm looking at Chip Kelly. And again, that's another reason why I think possibly the Raiders will invest more when you're paying Chip Kelly $6 million a year, the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league. You're going to want to invest in, a guy you're paying that type of money with to get him to come here. So there's probably some talks about getting certain players. Personally, I can't say he's like my top, but I would say he's the bridge that I want is Fields. And the reason why I'm saying that, I'm not paying Sam Darnold $40 million a year. I'm paying Russell Wilson $30+ million a year. And, I'm not paying Aaron Rodgers that type of money either. Either you guys are on the back leg of your contracts, you're not a good culture fit, but I feel like a good fit would be Fields based on a Chip Kelly offense that likes to do the RPOs, run the zone wide or outside or inside. And I think that he would be a good fit, and let him compete with Aiden O'Connell and then draft a quarterback on top of that to make this room complete. So I'm going to say right now, one of the cheapest options out there, but I feel it scheme-wise is a great fit, is going to be Justin Fields.
I didn't expect you to say Fields.
Yeah,
Cool.
my main pushback on that, Rich, was that if we are going to get somebody from the QB free agency or whatever, it was going to be, for me, it was going to be Matthew Stafford or screw it.
Well, yeah, we got to trade
sticking
one.
with Aiden O'Connell.
Who knows?
I'm sticking with Aiden and drafting.
Yeah.
So, but if we're talking trades, Angelo, then I'm going a different route. I'm a big Derek Carr fan. If he gets cut, I would look to bring him back because he got a raw deal from McShitnuts. Because you know what? He still would have been our quarterback probably to today if it wasn't for McDaniels, kicking him to the curb. So I could see, I don't like him. Yes, Stafford, he's 37 years old, but I think he would be a really good fit. But Carr and Stafford are not free agents. So what we're talking about is free agents right now, and neither one of those guys are free agents. So I'm going to take the best
reports coming out of the Rams is a first-round pick for Stafford.
Yeah, and I think Fields could end up meshing well with Chip Kelly. With he's a big RPO screen, get the ball out quick,
Jack said. I agree.
Athletic QB. So I mean that could bode well.
My only thing with the whole Fields issue is, I honestly don't think Jalen Milroe is getting picked up, and he might drop all the way to the second, possibly the third, just because when everybody starts to see that he's just another Joe Milton right now, at most he might get picked up in the second. So why would we get Fields when we could have Aiden O'Connell to bridge it and then get Jalen Milroe?
Milroe can't start right away. He needs to be seasoned and developed. You're not going to throw him out there. If you got a Milroe right now versus Aiden O'Connell, you're going to start Aiden O'Connell. But if you got a Justin Fields versus Aiden O'Connell, there's quarterback competition that's going to be had. I'm not going to say that Aiden O'Connell is just going to bow down to Justin Fields, but there's going to be a competition. But he does fit what Chip Kelly likes. Aiden O'Connell, yes, we could talk about Nick Foley. He's not a running quarterback, and he did pretty good, well with them.
Mm-hmm.
But you got a lot more options, a lot more plays if you have a Justin Fields on the field. And you don't need to throw deep because he's not an accurate passer. And we don't even have that X wide receiver anyways to do that. All our stuff is, below. Get it to Bowers, get to Myers. I mean, all that stuff is going to be closer to the line of scrimmage anyways. It fits.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, Rich, guys, but isn't it going to be the same bullshit that happened this last season where you have two different styles of quarterbacks confusing the shit out of the O-line instead of like pick one direction, man. Pick one direction.
Well,
And
no,
last time I checked,
you're not.
Will,
You're not.
Will Howard from Ohio wasn't a running quarterback. That's why I think Chip Kelly can work with Aiden O'Connell and then draft whoever.
No, you're not going to have that because you have a head coach who is used to having a RPO runaround style quarterback in Russell Wilson throughout the majority of his career. He brought in an offensive coordinator who mirrors that style, right, where he likes to have the kind of mobile quarterback option. And so I actually think that you're going to be molding your team to get that style of game in there. Now, the question is going to be, is that going to be successful when you have a defensive line like the Chiefs have right now, who is like the line's being run back, and they were darn good this year at getting to the quarterback. My Denver Broncos were number 1 or number 2 or something like that in rushing the passer this year, and I don't see that dropping off a tremendous amount. And so then the question is is that style going to bode well against your divisional opponents who make up, a good chunk of your schedule every year? And I think that's a fair thing to kind of start questioning and asking yourself if that makes sense. I want to throw over to DZ here, get your free agent that you're looking for. I believe you said a wide receiver or a weapon. I want to pick one.
So I think the whole Chargers fan base in the Herbert era are getting pretty tired of this guy playing with Walmart employees, injury prone, over the hill, or overrated weapons.
Mendoza?
I mean, every guy. I mean, look, Keenan Allen, he's like 50 years old, right? I mean, not really, but I mean, there's a high possibility that he might be back in LA. By the way, Devontae Adams is going to probably be a Ram, in my opinion, and I think Cooper Kupp will be a Chief.
I can see Devontae going to Pittsburgh.
Those are just my predictions. No, Devontae wants to go back on the West Coast.
You're right. He did say that.
He's going to come back with Carr, Jack.
So
going to be Carr.
So
I could actually see that.
The tough part about this, for me to say like a free agent, there really isn't any free agent right now. These are all hypothetical trade candidates that have been, quote unquote, like talked about with going to LA, because LA is going to have some money. They're going to cut Bosa. They're going to cut Pipkins. Bosa, we could probably try to trade him to Niners, get a 5th round pick, yada, yada, whatever. We're going to save a lot of money. We'll probably jump into that top 5 with cap space. Now, there are talks about Mark Andrews possibly being a cap casualty in Baltimore. I can definitely see the Chargers be all over that, getting him. So I really can't say like the free agent I want, because none of these guys are free agents. Now, there is one guy that Chargers fans are not really talking about, because they're talking about Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins. That ship sailed. I think since he's gonna tag him, and you know what, screw him, let him do it. They're gonna eat that, and I'll laugh, because they're gonna be in hell for years to come. So there is one guy though that I know he's talking about, because they're talking about these super flashy names, but Joe Ortiz has got to do something. He has got to bring a big name in, and but so do the Commanders, so do the Patriots, so do the Raiders. They all got money to spend, and so there's no guarantees, right? There's a guy flying on the radar that I like, and that's Darius Slayton from the Giants.
Yeah, Slayton's a good pickup. I was thinking about him for us, but yeah, good pick.
Darius Slayton could take that X role. He could be not super. He's not going to be his $30 million a year guy, and that would help out a lot, because Quentin Johnson is a bust. He's a 1st round bust written all over him. He had some good games last year, but look, we're just gonna have to live with him being on his rookie contract, and I can't see him staying after that. Joshua Palmer, now he's a free agent, and he's got numbers. Like you can see if you list like the top like 10, 20 available wide receivers in free agency, he's up there because he puts these numbers up, but he just doesn't have it, man. He just like he makes one or two spectacular catches a game but that's it. Justin needs a dude other than Ladd. I mean, Ladd McConkey balled out. Like he had 200 yards in that playoff game almost. He was 3 yards shy of 200 yards. But I don't want to use Ladd like an X, man. It terrifies the hell out of me, a kid of his stature being an X receiver a whole season. You know what I mean?
Might be a
Like,
repro.
yeah. But he's good. He's a dog, man. This kid's gonna be somebody. So Richie, to just conclude this, like I don't know of a free agent
I got one
that
for
I'd
you.
want because there isn't a free agent right now, but I could
I
definitely
got one
see
for
it.
you.
Go ahead.
Chris Godwin.
So that's a slot guy. Ladd can play. Ladd's a slot. So
And
I
Palmer
do
kind
like
of plays
Godwin
that
too.
Yeah.
I do like Godwin too a lot. I love Godwin, but I
No,
really think
I actually think that Godwin has the ability to kind of
And he's
maybe
coming
not
off injury, so
Yeah.
it's cheaper.
He could be cheaper for you. I also think that he has the ability, maybe not to play the pure X, but to certainly play the other, like kind of the wide receiver 2 kind of role, given his injury history the last little bit. I also think that he provides good, sure hands. That like he's been an excellent receiver in
he's
Tampa.
amazing. I love Godwin, man.
So I actually think that he would be a great
I
option
just looked at
for
this guy's team
guys.
right here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, DZ, that I when you said Godwin, I honestly think Spytek's gonna get him. I mean, he's gonna come to the Raiders anyways.
Sure, I
so,
can see. I have another theory too on like our guy Puna. He had a hell of a year. Like when the Bills for some reason didn't use him 2 years ago. He comes to Chargers and balls out as a D tackle. And by the way, this guy's only 5'10", right? He's like 5'10" and 300 and something. And my big worry, and it's not that much a worry anymore that I know what's in this draft, is that he's going to go to Papa Pete, because the Raiders got money to pay. They'll bring him over. They want to build that defense. And Puna Ford balled out, and I could totally see him reuniting with his old former head coach.
Yeah.
But,
And DZ, you've seen this. Who I've been propping up the whole year on the Chargers is D Ford. He balled out for the Chargers, man. He looks special.
Yeah. But then here's a caveat. Here's a little devil's advocate. Ortiz brought a lot of guys on 1-year deals, and he said he said this in his pressers, and so did Coach Jim Harbaugh. He said, "Look, come over here for a year, ball out, and we'll get you paid somewhere else or here." And the thing is, with Joe Ortiz as the new GM, he has brought over the Raven philosophy about comp picks. Now, I don't think he's going to get a comp pick for Puna going somewhere else, but their whole deal, I mean, he could, but the whole deal is they're going to let guys walk because they think that they can fill voids through the draft and through free agency. So,
and by the way, DZ, I think they can, because I've talked about this with other people who are Chargers fans. I'm like, you guys are taking Colston Loveland from Michigan.
Hang on,
that's your number one pick.
Time out. This guy all the way over here in the orange, that's another hot destination for Loveland, and they're in front of us.
No, I think no, and I'll tell you why you guys will end up with Loveland, because I think Sean Payton would rather have Warren from Penn.
There's no way they're getting Warren unless they climb up. Warren's a top 10 pick, man.
No, you think he's gonna go top 10, dude?
He is top.
No, he's dropping to the Broncos.
Check this out. What the Raiders have is they have a Kelsey and Gronk type tight end right now. You guys have both types.
Yep.
And they are both pretty damn good. I mean, Bowers, very good. And so Warren is the Gronk type.
Mm-hmm.
And then Loveland is a Kelsey type.
Yep.
But Loveland there's something interesting about Loveland. He's also kind of like of what Bowers did. He's this hybrid tight end, big X guy that you could put all over the field. That's Loveland's game as well. So I don't see people passing up on a Warren because he's a massive human. He could catch, he could block, he could do everything. And Loveland can do the same thing. He just doesn't have that stature. You know what I mean?
I understand everybody's saying that Tyler Warren will get picked high, which is, by the way, why I'm saying the Broncos are going to get him. Because, like it or not, everybody saw Bowers, right? And he didn't go until
the Chargers are picking ahead of Denver.
No, we're picking after.
Oh, you're picking after?
We're at 22.
Rich, what's Broncos? What's the number pick for Broncos?
I thought you were 20 and Broncos were 22.
No, Chargers are 22.
Backwards? No, Chargers are 22. Chargers are 22. We're 21.
Okay.
No.
I
think we're just ahead of you by 1.
You're like 19 or 20.
I think it's 20 and 22, but I thought the Chargers were knocked out first, so that's why I was thinking
20. We're 20. Sorry.
Okay, then I was wrong. I got it backwards. I got a flip flop.
So there's a high potential that Peyton. They know that people know the Chargers need weapons, but the thing is the great thing about this all is free agency comes before the draft. But like I think Rich was saying earlier, the free agency isn't really that good weapon-wise because a lot of the guys I'm talking about have to be released or traded by their teams. We're all assuming they're going to be cap casualties. Now, here's a caveat to what I'm saying. When the NFL came out, and I believe that was today, about increasing their salary cap, I have a feeling that a lot of players that people think that their teams can go after, they're going to be able to stay with those teams because they'll be able to kick the can down the road to pay these guys, if that makes sense, because they're like, oh, look, our cap's increasing quite a bit. You know, like when we didn't think we could originally afford this guy, we can push something
Alex
down.
said before everyone hopped on what the increase in the salary cap was. So Alex, go ahead and tell the chat what it was.
I mean, I've seen I think it's expected to increase by at least 22 million. I think up potential high of 277.8 million or something along those lines.
That's insane, guys. That's insane jump.
And I can see a player for both your teams going after is Harrison Bryant. So
and I think you're right.
Picked him up from the Bears. He was like their number one tight end, and who would ever expect that the Raiders would go after Bowers, which pushed him down the ladder, which he didn't get used very much. But I expect like one of your two teams to really go after him this offseason.
So let me ask you guys this. Is the salary cap right now 279.5?
I don't know what it is right now.
I've seen two numbers.
Salary cap's all a myth.
Sure. I mean, yes, to an extent it is, but then we also see the Saints right now, what they're going to deal with.
Well, and I think you're right, DZ, and these increases. Yeah, I guess it is the base salary right now.
Base salary cap is 279.5.
Okay.
295.
No, 279.
279. No, 295 is the expected one for next year.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So check this out. And this is what I'm starting to think of is like, I just know for my team, I know what they're going to potentially have, right? Because there's a lot of writing on the wall with who they're going to cut to save more money. This is a new regime. And, when they took over last year, the regime was kind of handicapped a little bit. So they're going to have a potential lot of cap. We'll also have 7 draft picks with a projected 3 comp picks this year. So 10 picks. And then next year, we're supposed to have even more money on top of that. And now you're increasing the salary cap. So I'm wondering, like, who's out there that they could go and, like, as a free agent wide receiver that they could be like, they can go after. Now, that would have been T. Higgins, but Bengals are now franchise tagging him, so that ship's sailed.
Did they make that official?
I don't think it could be official yet, but I think it's been announced that they're expected to do it.
Well, we got to see Burrow restructure his contract to fit all that in.
I mean, we've seen I think you'll see more and more teams with this deferred money approach. I mean, Philly, their roster, I think they're leading the league in deferred money, and it's it's like an astronomical amount. I'm pretty sure it's over $200 million in deferred
it's like
money.
baseball almost.
Yeah.
Well,
so
now I know me and Coach Defense kind of went on about this on X. He's not a big fan of Devontae Adams or DK Metcalf because he thinks, and he's rightfully right about some of their antics. He's worried about locker room and DK Metcalf potential penalties. But this is where I disagree with him. I think with what is going on with Seattle money wise and their new regime, I would definitely, with our money and our draft capital, DK Metcalf would be a guy I would go after in this offseason. That
For
would be
a trade?
My for a trade. Yeah.
Okay.
DK would be the guy.
Get him.
So sorry, just real quick on what you guys are saying about the salary cap. So 2025 salary cap as it stands today is 279.5 million. 2026 salary cap projected was supposed to be, or is supposed to be, 295.5. So if what you're saying is correct, that means what they've done is they are bringing forward 2026's salary cap into 2025. And if that's the case, I'm just based on this math, right? Just straight math where we're at today. And if that's the case, I think it was Alex, DZ, you both may have kind of said the same thing and agreed. Then I think teams may be then projecting that the league will be then bringing forward the entire salary cap a year. And if that's the case, and this is kind of where you're talking about deferred money, etc., the base salary cap projected for 2027 is 311 million.
Jesus.
Damn.
Okay, so the point being is that if the teams are saying, oh, we've made so much additional revenue in the betting markets, etc., that it is added more to the coffers than even we projected and imagined, and that we can now shift these salary caps and everything forward to jack them up, right? By 20 million is nothing to scoff at in terms of salary cap. I mean, that's an extra edge rusher that you'd never be able to have on your team, as an example, at a premium, like or near the premium in terms of having a guy like that, right? So if that's where we're at, then I think that this does change the math in terms of who people can.
It's time to extend like whatever players you want, and like Alex said, 28 players. Raider have 27 players, and you guys got your players. Give them that 4 or 5 year contract right now, because there's going to be it's going to be cheap.
Right. Yeah. I agree. So moving on to Alex, I'm curious in terms of your one free agent who you were wanting to pick out of your left tackle, and then I will cover off my Broncos after that, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's a bad time to need a left tackle in terms of free agents.
And the draft,
and really the draft. I mean, the only guy I'd want in the draft's Will Campbell, and there's no way in hell the Chiefs are getting him. So unless they, trade a lot. So, looking at the available left tackles, there's really only 3 that I would consider, and in my opinion, none are really going to be your left tackle of the future. But I don't think that's necessarily what Casey needs to shoot for. They just need a competent left tackle that doesn't require them to shuffle around other all-pro players to fill that void, which we saw him do this year. So, top available left tackle, I think is Cam Robinson. Yes.
Jesus.
I think top available left tackle is Cam Robinson. I don't think Chiefs are going to be getting him just because, he's 29, probably, going to get a bigger market deal, just based off other teams of need and being the top free agent. So really I'm looking at the 2 that would be realistic approaches are Ronnie Stanley from Baltimore and Tyron Smith from the Jets. Both kind of carry their own concerns in terms of, definitely Tyron Smith, hell of a career, all pro tackle, but, is not I mean, pretty much a guarantee to not give you a full year of service time on the field. And Ronnie Stanley also had some injury concerns, you know, especially this last season. But I think out of the two, Ronnie Stanley's got to be the one that they got to go after. You know, he's entering his 10th year, about to be 31. So I think you can get him on a more
This is your
team-friendly
bridge QB.
Yeah, the bridge left tackle, if you will.
Yeah.
And they can, you know, do what they do in the draft and you know, maybe try to develop Kingsley Sumamatea, who, you know, showed promise at times. You know, maybe not. And again, and another possibility is, at least from what I've seen in kind of these tag talks going out, that they're expected to let Trey Smith test the market. So, you know, that could potentially open up revenue for them to sign a Cam Robinson and you know, fill that void and at guard otherwise. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's some moving parts to it, but just looking at how things are currently structured, I think, you know, Ronnie Stanley's got to be the one to go after to, as you said, be their bridge QB at left tackle, give them time to develop that next person, but then also have the ease of knowing we have a competent person on a somewhat team-friendly deal that can give us what we need, you know, for the next year, 2 years.
No, I think that's fair enough. I was just looking at the list, and
It's not good.
I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you. So, I mean, there's a name there that I recognize. I mean, I recognize a few of them, but Calvin Anderson used to be a former Bronco. He was
None of them are
swing
good.
tackle for us, but I mean, he's certainly not a dude that I would be like, that's your guy. I will say that he played better at left tackle than he did right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I'll give him that, but he got a payday from New England when he went there, and then I think they re-signed him on like a cheaper deal. He's coming. Oh, he's now in Pitt. So Pittsburgh signed him as like a cheaper deal when New England released him. But man, you're slim pickings.
It's, like I said, tough time to need a left tackle, man. Like, and even looking at right tackles, because you know there's not really any. Because I looking at this, I'm like, you know, who maybe there's a guy there that kind of fits the Veach mold, a former flame out first rounder that has the athletic traits that he can sign to a team friendly deal and look like a genius. And there's not even anyone with an inkling of that potential. You know, in this free agency pool.
You can always get Leatherwood.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
you get Brandon Parker.
So our old right tackle, who was our right guard this year, he's a cap casualty. He's going to be a cap casualty. He's going to save them $9 million. And they'll probably end up either getting Trey Pipkins.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll probably go after a top guard or get one in the draft. And then I'm not 100, but I also think Jamari Sawyer, got it. I don't know if I'm 100 if he's going to be a UFA, because if he is, he was the guy that filled in at left tackle for filled in a left tackle for Slater when Slater got hurt that one year, and he did pretty admirable job. And then he played a little bit of right guard this year, and I don't know, man. It wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, he's the type of guy that would fit that void, like that Veach mold. But you know, just like I said, what's out there right now, it's got to be between Ronnie Stanley or Tyron Smith, which you don't feel great about really either one.
Right.
But you could at least get on a more friendly deal, and you know, ideally, if they're healthy, you know, you have a competent left tackle option and don't have to put Joe Tooney out there.
Sure. Yeah, seriously.
Right. So my Denver Broncos are in an interesting spot. We got a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, which allowed us to absorb a tremendous amount of dead cap with Russell Wilson. And I mean, the Broncos seemingly didn't really skip a beat with that.
Better.
I mean, we almost got better, right? Like we actually got better.
Addition by subtraction.
Yeah, exactly.
Give Robert some credit. Good job, Robert.
Who?
Robert.
Yeah, what about him?
Oh, I just love the fact that he said start him. And
yeah,
they
look,
did.
we've been down that road, and there's
We're not starting this again.
we're not going down that again. But
We're on to
I'm kidding,
2025.
Yeah. Like we'll say this. He got better as the season went on. He started not making some of the same mistakes that he was making, and it's now up to him. Even Sean Payton said as much. It's now on him to take in the big things that need to be elevated for him to take the next step in his career. And I agree. I mean, I 100% agree. This is the year for a rookie quarterback to kind of go from better than expected to not only prove that he belonged in that conversation for offensive rookie of the year, but to then also elevate himself to get to a point where people are starting to talk about him rather in the same discussions as some of those other quarterbacks that Angelo and I and we were all talking about earlier in the show. Can he go from here, get himself to there? Now, the next step after that is we've seen Bo Nix make some boneheaded choices. We would then need to see him, if he wanted to really elevate himself, to start show that he can maintain and show that clutch gene that those true elite quarterbacks have. So, I mean, Bo Nix has that tiered progression that he's still got to show that he can do. With that in mind, yes, you're correct. I did. And I will absolutely own my thing. And I still maintain that there's the possibility the Broncos would have ended up where we were, even if he did sit on the bench for the first few weeks. But you're right. The way that the Broncos played this year, it is undeniable that we took a major step forward and that Bo Nix was the right choice for quarterback for my Denver Broncos because he's clearly meshing well with Sean Payton.
Yeah.
And, two things can be true, Cool Kev. Two things can be true. And so looking at the free agents, I had a couple options. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of building through the trenches. And that would, normally or potentially be my number one choice. I actually just think when it comes to performance for my Denver Broncos, I think that we needed a more dominant wide receiver on the team to force the field to stretch out a little bit more. And by the way, I can't remember who it was. 1A, 1B, we had Jack and Angelo here kind of vying for which one they wanted in terms of, QB or guard. My second option there is running back. Even though this is a really deep running back draft, I effectively am in the camp with the Denver Broncos, where if you told me that they were literally just cutting every single running back on our roster, aside from Julian McLaughlin, I would be okay.
You're gonna let Estime go, dude? You're gonna let Estime go?
Angelo, that's what I'm saying, bro. I've been saying that.
Estime had a problem this year where his carry percentage to putting it on the turf was too high for a rookie running back. Sean Payton was clearly losing faith in him as a running back, which is why you saw him benched in the playoff game. I know that Jack was saying you should have played him. But sure, but the problem is that in the last few games there, he put the ball on the ground. He struggled a little bit despite his size and pass protection. That's not an uncommon thing for a rookie running back to have issues with, because part of pass pro is reading the defense when they're coming at you and knowing what lane to stay in and whatnot. That didn't surprise me a tremendous amount. But he also didn't burst through the holes that were made available to him on a regular basis, or as regular of a basis as you would want a running back to do on the Denver Broncos. And there's a few stats that bear that out. And frankly, the film and tape shows the same thing, where, certain guys were able to do it at certain points, but they weren't able to do it consistently. And that's a problem. Javonte Williams, in my opinion, that ship has sailed. Statistically speaking, he was somewhere, I think 34th out of 34 running backs in terms of a whole bunch of major stats, including yards after contact, yards after contact, yards after catch, breaking through the line of scrimmage, getting to the second level, all that kind of stuff. He was either dead last or one above dead last in almost every single major statistical category that mattered. That is just simply not good enough. It really pains me to have to say that kind of stuff out loud because I feel that I'm kind of slandering a guy that I actually really liked. But I think that injury that he had severely hindered his ability in order to kind of be that battering ram that he once was. So with that in mind, running back is something that I think you need to do because you don't want to force your team to have to pick up a bunch of guys in the draft. You want the guys that you pick in the draft to be the best players available at positions of need, but you don't want to absolutely require them. The only exception to that is, say, a quarterback, right? If you're in the top 3, odds are you're picking that number 1 position because you're there for a reason, and it's normally because you don't got it.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think the quarterback is one of the only positions where you're kind of like, I need him, I'm taking him, right? And I think every position after that or every group after that, you're probably not in that spot.
So since you said a position of need at being a wide receiver, who are you looking at, Richie?
I liked, just going to get 2. I like 2 guys, and I think depends on kind of where they sit. So obviously, T. Higgins is a guy I really like, although I think he's unattainable at this point. But right now, he's certainly, still floating around as being a UFA. And then I think below T. Higgins there, you have Stephon Diggs and Chris Godwin, which are options at that position. I think both of them, both Diggs and Godwin, have technical route running abilities. I think they have the ability to play within complex offenses. They come from winning cultures, or at least recently winning cultures, which I think is an important thing as well. Knowing how to win and learning how to win, I think, is a big deal. That is a very important thing for me. If you have a guy that's used to losing, you start questioning whether or not that they can overcome that on a team that has now started to turn the corner from a losing culture to a winning culture. You hope that you're not sure if they're going to be able to make that transition. So I think bringing in winners, I think, is an important piece, and coaching staff helps with that. I agree. Diggs might be, but then the question is, certain coaches bring out the best in certain guys. And I think too many people underestimate Sean Payton and his clout within the league. And so I do question whether or not Diggs can kind of Payton can kind of put someone like Diggs in his place a little bit and say, look, you know who I am, you know what I've done, let's make it happen.
Well, I gotta almost disagree a little bit. Who is your wide receiver? Who was his wide receiver with New Orleans? I'm trying to. He was like
Michael
the
Thomas.
best wide receiver.
Michael Thomas.
Yeah, Michael Thomas. So I don't know.
But
I think wide receivers can be so much divas that
they can be.
It
You're right.
Doesn't even matter.
You almost need him to have a little bit of diva in him. Like it's like.
So there's 2 position groups that you need a guy that's got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and perhaps a bit of an attitude. The question is, do you have the head coach that's got a big enough personality and commands enough respect to keep him in their place? And to
reel that in when they need
to. So cornerback is one of them and wide receiver is another. And that's because both of those guys are often on an island all by their lonesome, and they are either dependent or independent positions, depending on which way you want to look at it. The wide receiver is dependent on a good quarterback, but at the same time, they're also put in a position where they need to win that one-on-one battle against whomever is blocking and or defending them. And in some cases, they need to win that 2-on-1 and 3-on-1 battle with whoever is trying to block them or prevent them from catching the ball. And so you need a little bit of a chip on your shoulder to say, I don't care who you have blocking me, I'm going to win. Now, Mike Thomas really went off the rails after the coaching regime really changed over. Like they went full, I am bigger than the team mode after Peyton left and all that sort of stuff. And it obviously all went downhill from there. But he obviously had that mental mindset. But I think with a more seasoned head coach that commanded respect like Sean Payton, I think that was kept in check. And I think that's what you saw when he was there.
Speaking of the Saints, real quick, I think there's a high chance that Alvin Kamara becomes a cap casualty.
Good. He can play for any other team but mine.
Oh, I'd still take him. I'd take him still.
I'd
That
take it.
guy's he's got juice left.
He does. My issue with Kamara is that
Especially if you're going to cut your whole running back room. I mean, why not a Kamara?
Well,
Or
look
a
at so
Nick
like
Chubb or Jones.
the top.
I have
guy
one
right
word
now,
for you, Jack. Youth.
Right, sure.
And I will say this is a very deep draft for the running backs.
Yes. So right now, like in free agency, the top free agent running back, I believe, is Najee Harris, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
kind of
mine.
consensus.
No. Adams is the other one. Sorry. So there is a Broncos. Aaron Jones. So Aaron Jones and Najee Harris in Broncos country is kind of the debate du jour when it comes to the running back position. Just for the benefit of those on the show, that was going to be the other position that I was going to bring up as my B, free agent signing.
1B, 1A, 1B.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of where I'm at in terms of that. I want Najee Harris personally, and then the founder of the MHRT network, he and I are of differing opinions. Shocker, I disagree with someone. Is he wants Aaron Jones. And I actually think that there's valid reasons of why one would want one versus the other. And I'm totally on board with understanding that, I have a different opinion and they have a different opinion, and we're just coming at it. We want the same thing. We both want success, but we're coming at it from different angles. And I completely understand where the other side's coming from.
I think the same thing with Chargers fans, because they're like, there's J.K. Dobbins. We got to bring him back. Do we bring him back? Do we bring in Najee Harris? And something impressive about Najee Harris, he hasn't missed a game in 4 years.
Nope.
Now, to me and to some other people, there's another side to that. And this guy's got a ton of wear and tear on him. So it's like, there's like that balance. Like, this guy's an Iron Man, and I'm sure any team would be glad to have him. But then
collapse happen?
But then it's like running backs have that fine line where it just goes, drops off.
Right.
And ironically,
so sorry, just real quick on Najee Harris, because he's the guy obviously I've been pushing for. I knew that already, and I've said that already publicly, so that's why I want him as my running back, kind of looking forward.
Tough dude.
He's a tough dude. He's a bigger guy. I like his height and size. He's like 6'1", 230, somewhere in that range. A little bit shorter and smaller than me, but still great as a running back in terms of size combo. He also catches the ball fairly well out of the backfield as well, which is another important piece. So you can actually end up with the secondary side to his game, which is, like you're just talking about Kamara. Obviously, Kamara is like one of the, as Sean Payton calls him, Kamara was a joker, right, on his team. He was that X factor that was, you never knew what you're going to get on any given play from him. I like Najee Harris because he is a bigger, taller guy. He provides you an additional option. He can pass pro well. He can run the ball well, and he has not missed a game. So, availability is the best ability, right?
Yeah,
if you're not on the field,
definitely.
You can't really play. Right. And I'm actually of this
Joey
opinion.
Bosa on my team, Rich.
Right.
And
so I'm actually of this opinion here. This has been my take for my Denver Broncos for almost before the season was even over, which is I want an early round running back for my Denver Broncos, and then I want a second running back taken in like the 6th or 7th round with the kind of those later round picks, and this is a slash for me because my Denver Broncos have had unbelievable success with undrafted free agents or in terms of running backs for my team in particular. I'd be totally cool if we found a gem in as a UDFA as a running back as well as the second running back drafted.
And we're thinking the same way. That's what I want my Raiders to do too.
Right.
Double dip.
Yeah. And so when I say cut the running back room, I'm not just saying that just to be, for the shock and awe factor. I actually have a rhyme and a reason as to why I want that. Our running backs performed some of the worst in the league last year with my Denver Broncos. And they've had a reasonable, with the exception of Estime, obviously, but we've had some reasonable consistency in that room and not improved. So guess what? Like, why would you roll?
Chop block.
Yeah, like why would you run back the same crap if it's not working for you? You cut it, you move on, and you improve your team. That's part of the reason for the offseason. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I
was just gonna say real quick, Rich, about the running backs. It's ironic that with how well Saquon did and Derrick Henry did and James Cook and you would think that the running back price market would go up, and I don't think it will because there's so many running backs in the draft that every team is just gonna go. It's either this much or we're going to go draft someone.
Yeah,
that's
true.
I agree. And they're saying that this is a generational draft for running backs. Like there are draft experts that are in shock and awe about the fact that they're looking at the 6th, 7th, and 8th running back in terms of the depth chart. And they're basically saying that in almost any other draft, like that guy would be first or second round in any other draft except this one.
I'm hearing that about the
only one running back may go in round 1.
Right.
So Daniel Jeremiah,
number 1, North Carolina running back is going to probably go number 2.
Omari Hampton.
Both Ohio State running backs probably in round 3.
Mm-hmm. So Daniel Jeremiah, he's probably I respect him probably one of the most for prospects like out of the big name talking heads. His latest mock, he had the Chargers getting Omari and Hampton from North Carolina at pick 22, and that kind of surprised me. I'm like, whoa, because I haven't seen a running back go in the first round, my team, for a very long time, and I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know if I'm a big fan. I mean, I've watched his tape, and
he's a big boy.
He's a big boy, but it doesn't seem like he does anything great. He just seems to be like this solid running back, if that makes sense. I'm a big fan. I want us to bring back J.K. Dobbins. I think he's going to be another year out from his injury, so he's going to be even better. And
he didn't get re-signed yet? He didn't get re-signed yet? He didn't get...
We're going to have... We can't re-sign him yet. We got to wait for free agency to start. But okay. I think that both sides want to come back. I think they cut Gus Edwards, let him go. I don't think they were a big fan of his game this year. He wasn't good. But you know who I want? I want Cam Scatterbo.
Well, you know what?
I want
Scatterbo.
Just brought that up. I think he's the number 1, 2, 3, 4. He's the number 5 running back coming off the board.
I mean, but yeah, I want him, dude. That guy is like he's your sledgehammer. I mean, that kid, he looks like the real deal, man. I like him a lot. But like you were saying, Jack, there's so many guys, and I'm still in my infancy of like watching some of these prospects. But right now, the most impressive unit I'm seeing are the D tackles, in my opinion. Like and then obviously you've got the 5 wide receivers. There's some really good like that. How do you guys say that guy's Tet McMurray? How do you say his name?
Yeah,
Tatoria.
Yeah, he's like 6'4", 6'5", 210 pounds. He's probably,
dude. He's either his floor is Mike Williams, and then his ceiling is Mike Evans. Like that's the way I see him.
St. Brown is like one of the guys they kind of compare him to.
But right now, what I've seen, D tackles are the most impressive to me. Like I'm like blown away by some of these freaks that I think every one of our teams is going to be able to grab a dude. And like,
Michael
why
Graham.
Wouldn't you? Like,
Michael
there's some.
And actually, Angelo, when the show's over, dude, I'm going to give you a call, bro.
Okay.
I want to talk
about Richie, I know you want to wrap it up, right? So,
yeah.
Can I just do a promo before we wrap it up when you're
Fire
ready?
away.
Oh, now? You want to do it now?
No.
Okay. All right. So, guys, if you could put this up, Richie, for me. It's the off season, and I keep talking to Raider Nation about this because there's a few of us that understand this concept, and a lot of the United States fan base, honestly, they don't get it. But if you were a boxing fan of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, then this is the time to start watching it again, because boxing has been better than it's ever been in the last 24 months. And just as an example, this Saturday, this has never happened before, 7 world title fights in
Wow.
one event is only going to cost you, and it sucks too because we're paying more in America, but it's only going to cost you in America $25. Because
Jeez.
if you're in Canada, it's like $19 or something like that, and if you're in like the UK, some parts of it is free, and so the whole thing is the boxing has pretty much been at its top. The reason why you don't see it in the mass media market of the US is our American boxers suck ass. I'm sorry to say it. Like, they're not in the top 5s. All the top 5s are somewhere else, right?
Right.
But if you love boxing and you actually want to support 4 American boxers who are competing this Saturday, Richie, you can look it up on how much it'll cost you over there, but just go into DAZN, 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 right? And it'll only cost you $25. And if you haven't watched boxing in a while, DZ, if you watch this, you're gonna go, oh shit, I need to start watching boxing again. So
Usually how it goes.
Kevin.
So, guys, with that in mind, we're going to reignite the free agency conversation and go a little bit more in depth. For those of you who joined us tonight, I want you to leave your team and the positions you think your team needs to look at the most in free agency down below in the comments. On the way out, if you've joined us, please click the like button on both the MHRT network and on Captain Jack's channel. We can go ahead and get as many folks that are AFC West fans in here as possible to get this chat hopping even more than it already was tonight. And next week, we'll go deeper into free agents, go down the position groups a little bit as well, because leading into the draft, let's not forget, leading into the draft, everyone's team, you need to fill out that roster, fill out the depth, and fill out the talent in order for your team to go into the draft in order to get that best player available and not have to reach to grab someone just to fill a void. And anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for the show tonight. And if you have anything else below, any other content or something you want us to cover on the show here, catch us on X, leave us a comment there, and we will go ahead and go from there.
Yeah, guys.
So next
so
week,
we're gonna go more in depth on different type of free agents we want. We only got to be able to touch on it tonight because we went different ways.
Yeah.
But I want to hear everyone's comments, like, who do you guys want for your team, when the next show happens. So think about it, make a smart decision on it, and we'll talk about it.
All right, guys, until next week, where the West Side is the best side. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come